Okay, we're here, Fatal Vision podcast, breaking with our normal format for an emergency episode. This is Billy Glidden. I'm here as always with James McGinnis. And again, I repeat, this is an emergency special episode of the podcast in light of breaking news just in the past day. So
Yes.
I'm going to open it up to James. James, so I,
Yeah.
I received a text message from you this morning. Do you want to tell our viewers about what you shared and what it was?
Well, yeah, first of all, welcome to our listeners from the United States and around the world. This is it's not a good day. Um, it's a very sad day. It's a terrifying day. Uh, what I learned this morning was that on a fringe far right news network last night, known as NewsMax, a gentleman by the name of Greg Kelly hosted Jeffrey MacDonald's current attorney, who, for more than half the program, claiming innocence and mostly as a plea directly to President Trump for a pardon for Jeffrey MacDonald.
And let me just
Because this
jump
is,
in. So
yeah,
this plea you're describing was made by the host Kelly or
by the
by
host Kelly and by the MacDonald team. I mean, this is based on what they're saying, what Hunter, or sorry, not Hunter, Hart is saying.
Art Miles?
That's Jeffrey
That's
MacDonald,
Jeffrey's
Hart Miles,
attorney.
Jeffrey's current attorney,
Yep.
is that this is their new strategy. Um, they're playing up the elderly aspect that he's not he's grandfathered out of compassionate release terms. Uh, and so they're saying we're looking for relief from President Trump. And the host and then they just fed into this whole innocence myth and a million different conspiracy theories, but mostly the breaking news is they're back.
They're back and they have a new legal strategy.
Yes, not legal. I mean, it's just begging for a pardon from Trump. And that's what they've got,
Okay.
and that's what they're going with. And this is just my sense is there's a lot more of this to come.
And what gives
And
you that impression? Was there anything Hart Miles said to suggest that he's going to be out there?
yeah, he said this case is far from over.
Okay.
And that they're going to be making their case. They're trying to get relief, and this is not the last stop.
Okay.
Uh, Fortunately, I've been monitoring the internet all day, and it hasn't broken through anywhere outside of the actual program.
Yeah.
But this is new. This is the
Okay.
first time we've seen Jeffrey MacDonald in a photo in 13 years.
How's he
Uh,
look?
he doesn't look good, and there's already been some remarks in the McDonald forums that picture might be doctored or he might be playing it up. He like kind of looks like he's demented or just like staring slack-jawed at the camera.
The slack jaw is what struck me. Yeah.
Yeah. We can all sort of take a selfie like that, even not even intentionally and look
I
like that.
probably
So
will. Yeah.
I probably look like it right now,
Yeah.
if you got the right frame. So that was what they're going with, and that he's
Okay.
basically
Can
he's
we
right.
talk about
Yeah.
some of the, I think it might be a service to
Yes.
our listeners in the public to go through some of the assertions that we're we're going to focus on what Miles said because having listened to the whole Kelly segment, Kelly doesn't really know where he is or what's going on.
Yeah,
He was in a bit of like a
it's
QAnon fever
it's
dream.
it's kind of the Greg Kelly punditry part of it is like McDonald and Trump are one and the same,
Oh yeah, he
and
said that they're cosmically connected.
there's a providential link, and that the deep state and
Well,
the
what's the story
lamestream.
there? What's the story there? There was a tweet that the president sent out with a picture of McDonald.
This is 10 years ago. This is when he was just running for the first time.
Mm.
Someone trolled him and said, "Hey, my badass Green Beret dad is his birthday today. Will you retweet me?" And they just sent him a photo of Jeffrey MacDonald, and he retweeted it, and it became like a little a funny side story for
Got
like
it.
10 seconds that McDonald got, or not, excuse me, Trump got tricked into the retweeting a picture of a murderer.
Okay,
Um,
but Greg Kelly saw that as a sign that God,
yeah, he
the
thought that
Spirit
was
is
yeah, they're
working.
one and the same, and
To,
that this is the Holy Spirit. Um,
and then the connection of like the narrative of Trump has been the victim of a DOJ persecution campaign.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, right,
Yes,
right,
the
right.
deep state, the
They're
Department of
both martyrs.
Justice,
They're both martyrs to the deep state.
martyrs.
Mhm.
Excuse me,
You
and
good?
I'm okay. I'll continue on.
Okay.
And the other thing was about the fake news, he called it, and he was blaming like Mike Wallace and Bob Schieffer for getting McDonald in prison for a story they did 4 years after he was convicted. So it's just one
Oh,
of those things.
okay. Well,
Uh,
now we're doing what I said we wouldn't do. So I'm sorry about that, but like
we're going
focusing
after
on.
we're going into what Greg said. Anyway,
Yeah.
well
Okay. So what are the assertions that Hart
okay, well
Miles is making?
so this is interesting because
Okay.
it doesn't matter what the like. So what is it? You're asking for a compassionate release pardon, but then you're also saying he's totally innocent. So
But
I
okay,
mean,
the compassionate release thing, it doesn't apply to cases before a certain year. So
yes,
basically he was convicted too long ago for this to apply. But is there not a condition where he would have to actually admit to the crime to get a compassionate release?
yeah, that's I think that would be if he wanted parole.
Parole. Okay, so during
Yeah,
COVID, he went for compassionate release and wasn't eligible for
and
that.
that was litigated. Yeah,
Okay.
that was the most recent headline about 4 years ago.
Okay, but he did make other
Yes.
assertions
So
about the
this is it.
case.
So this is what's concerning is that it might be the start of a new um campaign and sort of it seems like it's going to be restricted to far right airspace where um people are less likely to have working knowledge of the case or anybody's going to challenge it. And it seems like the strategy is to align McDonald with being innocent with supporting Trump and owning the libs. And, one of the things that Hart said on both broadcasts was that
What do you mean both broadcasts?
he did an AM radio broadcast with the same host yesterday.
Okay, okay.
And he said that Wade Smith had sent a letter to Joe Biden asking for a pardon. And
Wade Smith
by
being the trial lawyer in the original trial.
one of the local counsel for McDonald in 1979.
Yeah.
And Biden refused to give McDonald a pardon. I mean, it's like, so
I
now
doubt
this
he
is gonna
ever
be,
saw that.
sure, yeah, yeah. So anyway, they're trying to say like, look, you could own Biden by giving a pardon where he didn't do it or something. But
Okay.
now we've gotten off. So that's sort of like the sort of like the broad picture. And then you wanted me to address some
Yeah,
specific.
yeah. I mean, I think it's just worthwhile as this case now goes back out into the public for this attention campaign. You know, they're going to be making claims. Um, so compassionate release, he addressed. Um, we've talked about the fact that they're tailoring this to the precise psychological makeup of the president, right? They're
Yeah,
appealing to him along lines that uh, have worked, frankly. in dealing with this man. Whatever your politics are, listeners, we should just note that they are tailoring it
Yeah.
to a specific man with a particular psychological makeup. One thing Miles mentioned, which has been mentioned many times over the years by other McDonald defenders, was the idea that somehow the crime scene was so screwed up by the investigators on the scene that like none of the evidence collected there should have been permitted. None of it meant anything.
Yeah, that's been something Bernie Siegel argued all the way back in the Article 32 hearing in 1970. So
Mhm.
that's not a new argument.
Right,
Um,
right.
and that doesn't really apply to anything other than the evidence that was lost, which was McDonald's pajama bottoms and the trash and the toilet being flushed and the phone being handled.
Okay,
These
but
are,
so the McDonald defender says that evidence of the intruders might have been lost. So they flushed the toilet. One of the intruders
oh
mi-
yeah,
might have
right.
taken a
Well,
dump, and
we don't even have to say the McDonald defender because something that Hart Miles said yesterday was that um, in the modern day, that crime scene would have been secured, DNA samples taken, hippies convicted.
okay,
Um, so he's all in on the fantasy.
I see, I see.
Yeah.
So
So
even though there was no other evidence of intruders at all, he's saying that that they would have found DNA belonging to some hippies.
yes,
Okay.
that's that. I mean, but he's also saying you know this is the whole sort of the game is they're not even going to talk about the pajama top or blood types or anything because you can just throw the whole case out because there was 14 MPs in an unsecured crime scene
Okay.
on the night
Yeah,
on February
and again,
17th.
not I do need to know something Kelly said
Yeah.
in his conversation with Miles. He said that basically the MPs arrived on the scene and they were so grossed out by it that they failed to follow up on other leads from that night, which can bring us to the Ken Micah floppy hat point, which came
Yeah.
up. Why don't you
Hate to hear that. I
teach
hate it.
us about that?
I
Yeah.
felt really bad for Ken Micah because
Ken Micah was an MP at Fort Bragg that
first
night.
one on the scene, he's the one who applied mouth to McDonald, who wasn't in need of resuscitation, but he was sort of like playing possum. Um, anyway, he said he on his way to the scene, he saw a woman in a floppy hat standing in the rain.
Got it.
Um, and there was documented um there was he was pressured not to come forward with this story, but he ultimately did, and that was one of the things that sunk the original prosecution.
Pressured by the military.
Yes,
Got it.
yeah. But I think what they were harping on was that McDonald said the first words out of his mouth was a woman in a floppy hat was
Right.
here,
Right. Was that
and
true,
then
James?
no, it's
Is
not
that the
true.
first thing McDonald said?
No, it's not the first thing he said. Do you remember what he said? I can't remember what he said. I know they said I'm not gonna fuck with the acid heads anymore.
Goddamn MPs and
Yeah, yeah, like this
what
whole
happened to my
show.
kids? Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus, look at my wife.
Okay, but to listen to the Greg Kelly segment, they made it sound like the MPs arrived. McDonald immediately said, "Go find a woman in a floppy hat."
Yeah,
And
and they
then
already.
Ken Micah said, "Oh, I just saw one," but they were all too disoriented to go check.
I mean, this is sort of like where you run into like Greg Kelly will sort of come at McDonald's attorney with these insane retellings. He said there's 100 MPs in there. Um, the whole thing is just so preposterous to take in.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, we all know, and then they immediately try to conflate that with Helena Stokely, that Micah saw Stokely. which we have as recently as less than 5 years ago, him on the Errol Morris recording in the Mark Smerling documentary saying it was not Helena Stokely. I knew Helena Stokely and it was not her.
Okay.
And
So it's all about the Stokely confession and
yeah,
then Micah seeing floppy hat woman, and
they're
they're conflating that.
they're trying to cram in. Well, first of all, Greg says it's reasonable doubt already, which is a really high
To be
bar.
to be clear, to be clear about this, Greg Kelly is saying that the fact that there was a woman in the town wearing a floppy hat that
Is
night
reasonable doubt.
proves, or it creates reasonable doubt.
So
Yeah.
that's amazing for someone on so far on the right wing of punitive measures taken. He probably wants the death penalty for speeding tickets, but he wants people to walk for describing someone who happens to exist somewhere in the town, like you said.
Yep.
Anyway, it was
Okay.
very silly that part.
Okay.
But it seems like they're trying to get as much of the narrative in as possible that it was the person who did it was Helena Stokely, and she was spotted at the scene, and they never followed up on her. But McDonald was able to confirm her ahead of time. Um, and then there was some really crazy shit about DNA testing. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah, wait. Well, we'll come back. We'll come back to DNA
Yeah,
testing. Can we talk a little bit about Helena Stokely?
yeah, of course.
Why was
Um,
why did she confess so many times?
because she was fucked up and crazy and really, a tragic figure.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and she confessed and unconfessed and confessed and unconfessed and confessed and unconfessed.
What
And
about
then
under oath when
at
she
the
was
trial, she was asked, she couldn't remember. And then the next day, she said, I think I was there. And the supposed miscarriage of justice is that the judge wouldn't allow the many people who Stokely says, who told she thought she was there, to testify that she told them something that she wouldn't say under oath. I mean, Stokely is a whole, we could, that's obviously, it's a lot, there's a lot more there, but they're trying to do this sort of paint with this broad brush that we have the real killer, and her name was Helena Stokely, and the government suppressed it through, deep state
right,
malfeasance.
right.
Um,
Got it.
so,
They're banking on, as usual, they're banking on people not really examining this too closely. So
yes,
if you have NewsMax on in the background while you're making a meal and you just hear that Ken Micah saw somebody near the base and a woman who looked like that or had a hat like that anyway confessed to the crime, this guy shouldn't be in jail, especially if they're not also including any of the blood or the fiber, pajama fiber evidence. So
yes.
they're trying to
And
create enough space so that the president can take
well,
this action, have enough
I don't,
cover.
I don't see, that's the thing is like, yeah, that's the story. They think, this is being boiled down not for the viewer making dinner, but for President Trump
Right.
only. And um, so we don't have to persuade anybody but him, is what we're saying.
I guess so, but I don't know if enough of the Newsmax audience gets on board. The public opinion has to have some
It
influence
has to
on
be
this.
public opinion strictly in the far right blog sphere,
Yeah.
which is no, which is not without precedent for him offering pardons to certain people before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, I will just read from Fatal Vision here, just sort of the last word on Stokely in 1985 from
Okay.
Judge Dupree. It's from
Yep.
the 85 afterward. Helena Stokely and others were drawn to the case and have contributed to a factual charade which has allowed it to continue for more than a decade and a half. Their quote confessions have been shown to be unbelievable, and even if the government were again called upon to present its evidence at a new trial and MacDonald was able to put all of his new evidence before a second jury, the jury would again reach the almost inescapable conclusion that he was responsible for these horrible crimes.
Right.
Yeah, so there you go. A
Yeah,
factual charade. That's what,
factual charades. And if you watched, I know James did, if you listening, if you folks around the world listening to this, watch the Mark Smerling documentary, Wilderness of Error, the big moment at the end is Smerling playing a tape of Stokely's confession for Errol Morris, who he's interviewing. And Morris obviously became one of the big MacDonald apologists in the world and one of the big proponents of the Stokely theory. And Stokely confesses to committing the murder in a story that does not resemble in any way the story that MacDonald himself told,
yeah,
right? And it is so inconsistent with what MacDonald said that Morris himself has to acknowledge on camera that, yeah, the story makes no sense. Now, he still thinks she was there because why wouldn't he? He
yeah,
wrote
he
his
can't.
he wrote his book
Yeah.
about it. But even he had to say that story doesn't make any sense.
And he said Jeffrey's story is suspect as well, um,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But the great thing about going only for the far right wing is that you don't have to bring in Errol Morris or Janet Malcolm into the discussion when you're trying to discredit Fatal Vision.
Right.
You've got to try to come up with new material.
But they're using similar talking points.
Very similar.
Yeah, they even brought up some Malcolm stuff. So let's see. Hart Miles talking about the civil lawsuit that McDonald brought against Joe. What do you
Yes.
want to say about the claim he made? He said that it was settled in Jeffrey's favor. Is that true?
Yeah. No. No. I mean, there was a hung jury. It was a
Yeah.
civil trial. There was a hung jury, and there was a settlement
Mm-hmm.
with no admission of anything, just to make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was paid for by insurance, and uh, there was nothing proven discrediting Fatal Vision at that entire trial.
And didn't a lot of
And
that money end up going to Freddie Kassab anyway?
all of it did. Son
Yeah.
of Sam Law, which is interesting because the whole, genesis of the book would never have happened 10 years after it happened,
Right.
which is interesting. But,
Okay. He also
oh,
claimed that Hart Miles now also claimed that he picked Joe McGinnis apart on the stand in the evidentiary hearing in
yeah,
2012.
I have no idea what he's talking about. I mean, we've heard the tape
Hmm.
from Morally Indefensible.
Yeah.
He doesn't sound that, he didn't come off very good as a trial lawyer there, but,
Yeah, what happened at the evidentiary hearing in 2012? So for more context, so that was like the last actual legal maneuver that the
yes.
McDonald team made. It was
So
2012
McDonald,
evidentiary
yeah,
hearing. There was the um, affidavit signed by Jimmy Britt, who was a marshal.
yeah. They got to put in all of the evidence that they collected through kooks and quacks and PIs over at that point it was 30 years.
Hmm.
And all the evidence that was discovered after the 79 trial, because they'd
Hmm.
already been shut down for that he didn't get a fair trial in 79. So they brought it all for one big hearing, and the judge said that's not enough for a new trial. And they went to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which said that's he was right, and then they went to the full Fourth Circuit, which didn't take up their case, and that was the end. So,
So, but their big slam dunk there was supposed to be the Britt affidavit, right? That allegedly Stokely
well,
confessed to Jimmy Britt.
yeah, yeah,
And then Jimmy Britt was in the
but
room and he saw
but
Jim
they're not, but
Blackburn threaten him.
yeah, they're not even really touching on any of that in these broadcasts, though. That's getting too into the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah,
All they
no,
were able
I'm
to,
just
yeah,
raising it so that we
yeah,
can establish that that was their strongest claim and it was completely
yeah. It was no,
refuted.
it was an embarrassment.
Um,
This is all available on iTunes on this movie, Morley of
Wilderness of
the
Error.
Wilderness of Error. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So it's quite remarkable that with all this public pressure, with all this campaign around public opinion over the years, that the courts have actually held fast in assessing
yeah, and it's
evidence
amazing that it could all be undone. All of that work could just be erased tomorrow
by the pardon power.
by the pardon power of President Trump. So that's where we're at. That's why today was a chilling day because you had people, the legacy of, Joe, Freddie,
Yeah.
Mildred, Bobby, and of course Brian Murtagh, Jim Blackburn. It could
Yeah.
all just be for nothing
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Can I ask you I want to get into all that. I just want to ask you one last assertion. You brought up the DNA stuff that they're calling exculpatory or that there was exculpatory DNA evidence that the government withheld or
well, yeah, it was
but
they were able to sort of just breeze by it, because there's no they weren't being challenged. In 2006 there was they announced some DNA tests. They were trying to match them to the DNA profile of, Helena Stokely, who they're still talking about, and Greg Mitchell, who they still talk about. And there was an unsourced hair
hmm
found in um in and around Kristen, I believe,
hmm
and it didn't match the two suspects they're claiming were there.
Did it match Helena Stokely?
Didn't match Helena Stokely. Didn't match Jeffrey MacDonald. Didn't match anyone in the family.
hmm
And so it's just some random hair. It wasn't unlike the hair that was found in Colette MacDonald's hand,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah,
which
we'll get to that.
which was bloodied and had been pulled out clearly in some sort of a
And
defensive.
they tested that. So just to be clear, so there was an unsourced hair for years that they were all excited about getting
Yes,
tested.
they don't talk about that one anymore.
And that one was found in Colette McDonald's hand, and
Bloodied.
it was bloodied, and they tested it. And James, who did that hair belong to?
It was an exact match for Jeffrey MacDonald.
Okay, okay,
So she
gotcha,
clearly tore it out of his arm in a conflict. But
got it.
so
Okay,
now we just breeze past that here if we're the McDonald lawyer and we say there was an unsourced hair which was exculpatory, which means he's innocent. Um, and
right.
then the government magically changed the definition of what exculpatory is, or there's obvious there's also theory,
Yeah.
the hair didn't show up in the lab until 5 months after the crime. There is a lot of stuff about it that is sketchy.
hmm
But the way this lawyer presents it on television is that the government was able to just decide that it didn't matter that he was innocent and just
Yeah.
bury it,
Yeah.
which goes against the, yeah,
Military quarters, right? It was a home where others had lived, and as we know from Fatal Vision, it was also a home that was welcoming dozens and
Matt
dozens of guests.
McDonald is constantly packing people in.
Yeah,
He's on
yeah.
every yeah, he had Ron Harris in there for Jello and cookies on Valentine's Day. So I mean, come
Right,
on.
right, right.
Um,
Yeah, let's get into some of
so
this.
this is all, but this is where we're sitting here in the brain trust of McDonald expertise,
Yeah, yeah, which is what we
and
intended on doing. Yep,
which is what we're here to do.
yep.
So we know what's going on,
Right,
and they don't care that we know what's going on
right.
because they have a they're going for platforms where they're going to be unchallenged. They're going to show this picture of him looking like he's already dead,
Mhm.
and they're just hoping that Trump's going to find time
Yeah,
between destroying the post office or whatever, you destroy NATO to just free a triple murderer.
yeah. So I want to get into the bigger picture here, and you were talking about Freddie and Mildred. Now, again, if you are new to this case, Freddie and Mildred are the parents of Colette McDonald, the victim, one of the victims of this crime. And Freddie perhaps is singularly responsible for keeping this case alive, as long as it did remain alive for Victor Warhide to pick it up
Yeah.
and look at this. So without Freddie's determination, without Freddie looking at the evidence and reaching the conclusion he did, this all goes away, and Jeff is still administering hugs and dispensing medical advice. Um,
Yeah, he'd be sitting in
so
probably Trump's cabinet right now.
we should be thinking about these
He
people.
might still end up there.
You might, yeah, and we're talking shit about Trump, and I want to just say something about that. Just give me like a few moments here, James, and we'll go back and forth again. But like I've been thinking about this all day, right? Because I woke up to your text this morning, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And yeah, listeners to this podcast like know already because we were recording back over the summer and through the conventions, and our feelings about the political situation are well known, right? Um, we've used humor to make our points about how we feel about this administration, about the threat that we felt was present in this person returning to power. I don't really want to fight about politics with anybody. Like, yeah, one-star reviewer on Apple, like I'm sure we sound unhinged to you when we're talking about this. And we're doing this podcast, James, not to bash Trump. We're doing it because we love the book, we love your dad, and we hate that these people suffered at the hands of McDonald. But we have to talk about the political environment now because the political environment, as you said earlier today, is part of the strategy, right?
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's what McDonald
It
is
it
banking
is the
on.
strategy. It is the
This is
only
the whole
strategy.
strategy.
Yeah.
McDonald's lawyer thinks that by going on right-wing media and appealing directly to President Trump and framing it as a binary choice, Biden didn't do it, you can do it, they might get to free Jeff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Throw some deep state conspiracy theorizing on top of it, and you have the whole strategy. So
Yeah.
I just think it's important to be clear about what's happening here. Whoever you voted for, I'm not mad at you. I'm not like here to fight about that. Like this is a Fatal Vision podcast, but like we're living in a moment where there are narratives about folks who work in government that the McDonald team is seizing on intentionally, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
I know folks who work for the federal government. I have dear friends who worked in past administrations. Um, there's not a perfect institution on earth, but I can tell you that like the people that go to work in government, federally or locally, are there because they want to like build better roads and bridges and protect consumers and hire good people to do good work. And I mean, this is a nonpartisan principle. And so the McDonald team is seizing on this mistrust that has been sown cynically. And they're trying to tap into this fever dream about a deep state that is plotting to hurt people like you and
Yeah.
me and Trump and McDonald. So
Yeah.
I really wish that I'm getting worked up, but
No, and it's a beautiful thing.
I
It's,
really wish that these conspiracy theorists who are having their reality mediated to them through their X feed could meet some of the folks that I know who work in government. The story of McDonald, in this case, it's not a story of overzealous, corrupt officials. Like Brian Murtagh is not a mid-level bureaucrat run amok, as McDonald called him. And
yeah.
we can talk
Yeah.
more about that. We can talk more about
Sure.
Murtaugh,
I mean,
but
the rhetoric, the thing is, what's so striking, Billy, is the rhetoric is exactly the same as the one McDonald's been employing since his conviction,
it's
or even
exactly the
before it.
same.
Yeah.
And I just want to like bring us back to like what you were raising before, what this story is about. It's about Freddie Kassab, who reviewed the evidence and wouldn't stop until Jeff got indicted. And it's about Victor Warhide and Brian Murtaugh and Jim Blackburn, who built a case that got a conviction because of the physical evidence. That's it. That's the whole story. There wasn't a single piece of evidence admitted at trial about Jeff being a creepy guy. It was
Hmm.
all physical evidence. And now we live in a society. We have established methods of evaluating claims and testing their veracity and making judgments and weighing competing claims. And we're fucked when we decide that these methods or even the idea of facts themselves just don't matter anymore. Like
Yeah.
we've lost something. We've lost something essential. When facts and reason are thrown overboard and only outlandish conspiracy theories pass for wisdom, we've lost the ability to deliberate. We've lost the ability to govern ourselves, right? And like so whatever. It could be that we're too far gone. But I want to ask any friends of ours out there, any listeners who are hanging out with us, maybe in spite of our politics, or you agree with us about the case and you like Fatal Vision, but you think we're unhinged, Apple reviewer. What does it say about our current political moment that this is McDonald's strategy? Do you not
Yeah.
see now that this is consistent with a post-truth, post-fact political culture? McDonald's hair was found in Colette's hand. That's just a fact. He says he was attacked in the living room, but none of his blood was there. Not a single pajama thread was there. It was all in the bedroom. These are the facts. They're knowable. Two and two can't equal five.
Yeah.
If we pretend that they can, then it's all just power and narrative and culture, and we're just it's all about who can flex the hardest. Then you can say Ukraine attacked Russia. Then you can say QAnon makes sense. You can say anything you fucking want.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stop with this and open it
No, don't
back up.
stop.
But do we not deserve better? Shouldn't we respect each other more than this? Don't Freddie and Mildred Kassab deserve better than this? Doesn't Bob Stevenson, Colette's brother, who's still alive, deserve better than this? Don't Colette and Kimberly and Christy deserve better than this? Like I have to think we can do better. And and I think it's time for all of us who care about this case and who live in this country to think about what we can do to help each other live in reality. Like, be committed to things like inquiry, debate, facts, reason, evidence. Leave your partisan affiliation aside and just look at what's happening here. And if we should say a prayer, say one for the people that are really affected and stop treating it like a game.
Yeah. That was beautiful. I needed that today.
Whew.
Yeah, I mean, mic drop moment. I mean, and this is where we're at right now. Where we're seriously facing the possibility that after everything that Freddie, that everybody did, sort of miracle. And I know Jim Blackburn, we talked to him, didn't think there was any chance he was ever going to get released after the conviction. Um, but it's sure people sure had to work pretty hard to show up to all those hearings and all those appeals and shoot it down in the parole hearing in '05 and onward and onward, and to have it come down to just this moment where you know you could piss off some soft, fact-loving pussies by releasing McDonald. That's their strategy. It's just like, can we just own the libs by releasing this baby killer? As um, and that's what they want. That's I think that's what he would do. That's why he would do it,
Yep.
is to be provocative. We were doing a little bit of research ahead of the show about, has there ever been a presidential pardon for murder? And there hasn't been that we know of. They didn't start keeping track of them apparently until the last 30 years. But and then of course, the article helpfully stated most murderers are prosecuted on the state level, so it doesn't really come up that often. So, oh, that's very helpful. Well, this doesn't help us here right now with this case. And let the case be your example. Let the case be your teacher. Let the book be your teacher when in this era where um, they're coming at, you can see, you witness it happening in real time, where the the marriage of far right deep state conspiracy and QAnon satanic pedophile rings
Hmm.
come together to free Jeffrey MacDonald. Um, I just can't bear it. It's unbearable. I mean, maybe nothing will happen. And it won't be through any merit. It'll just be through blind luck. Like maybe Trump will never get around to it. But they have 4 whole year. They have, well, 47 months left to do it. Um,
Yep. And
and it
and and and
seems
this was
like
just
they're.
the beginning.
I think this was just the beginning, and we got to get out in front of it and let over. It didn't seem to land very well. I don't think. I even saw some people respond to Mr. Kelly saying that, "Hey, man, I love your show. I love everything you say, but McDonald's guilty as hell, man." So, and I remember he's tweeted about this twice before. I remember he was Greg Kelly before he was a NewsMax anchor was tweeting at Trump in December of 2020 saying, "Pardon McDonald now. He's innocent."
Hmm. Hmm.
So he's been an ally for that camp for a while, and I just think it's sickening, honestly, that absolutely disgusting that this attorney is getting involved now and has the is so shameless that he would go on television and say that this is a moment of compassion and have give Jeffrey some relief.
Hmm.
He didn't show any relief at all, any compassion at all between 3 and 4 in the morning on February 17th, 1970. So yeah, I think he can wait
Or
it out a few
or
more
or any
years.
time since then, man.
Yeah.
We've
Oh, yeah.
talked about this.
Or at the grand jury. Yeah. No. We go through the whole book. He's not a He's an arrogant, bitter narcissist. He's not someone who's capable of having compassion for anybody.
Well, and
So,
we talked in an earlier episode about the idea that he could have stopped. So he could have
oh
stopped at
yeah,
any
he
time.
can stop now,
That's what we're saying. He could stop
Jeffrey. You could
now.
stop tonight.
He could
You can
stop.
just confess
He could stop lying about
the
what happened.
absurdity. The absurdity. It's 55 years later, and now we're sitting here at 11:24 on the East. He's determined to get a pardon from the President of the United States through just ego sucking.
Yeah.
And as we know from Fatal Vision, he was started musing about pardons back in the early '80s. It's okay, man. Jack Anderson is a big fan. Maybe he can present the pardon idea to Reagan. So it's always been in
Yeah.
his back pocket. Wade's probably sent a letter to every outgoing administration.
Yeah. Yeah. Poor Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I
So
really
it's a
don't
tough
want to.
day.
I really don't want to hurt anybody that feels differently from how I feel about politics, but like facts and evidence, like a belief in something called the truth that is knowable. Like we live in a world that is intelligible to us, and we can actually go out and figure things out. Um, if we don't have that, we don't have anything in terms of being a self-governing
Yeah.
society. So, I mean, however you feel
And
about what
let
the
this be
tax
your
rate
wake
should
up
be,
call. Yeah.
however you feel about what the tax rate should be, the extent to which immigration should be permitted or not, what kind of healthcare system you think we should have. Bracket that for the time being and think about what it means to live in a political moment where the whole idea of knowable reality is cast it's thrown overboard because
Yeah.
that's where we're at. That's what I heard on Newsmax when it came to this case.
That's what you're hearing. That's what McDonald is capitalizing on because the way you've characterized it is dead on. 1 month in, and they see a golden opportunity to take advantage of a factless administration and world. Um,
Yep, yep. So maybe
so
that should be the note we close on then.
yeah,
Um,
this is an emergency cast. We urge
um,
all of you to pick up your copies of Fatal Vision and read the truth because it's
um,
there. It's not on the air.
if you need something shorter, look up Gene Weingarten on Brian
Yes,
Murtagh in the Washington Post. That'll take you 15 minutes to read.
that's a good that it would start there, and then
It's a
the
good
battle
place
goes
to
on.
start. And I offer these thoughts in humility. Um, we share this country, and I will live and work alongside you, but we need to have some rules of the road when it comes to deliberating.
Yeah, and God willing, we won't be having another emergency podcast
Yep.
dissecting the actual event and its aftermath.
Yep. So, apologies to anybody I offended, but I wanna be real. I wanna be real with you. I wanna be real with
Yeah,
you about what's going on here.
this is a free speech zone. I think that they're all really into that now, so they can fucking cry harder.
Okay.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Stay close. Feel free to leave us another review.
Yeah, scathing reviews, keep them coming.